Good morning, Nigeria. Good morning, Abuja. Welcome to Daybreak on Trust Television, coming to you live from our studio here in the nation's capital. It is a very beautiful Tuesday morning, and the week is looking rather, hopeful and interesting. We saw the president made a lot of promises, earlier this week, and he is saying that with his confidence, he's saying that they let Nigeria breathe. So let's hold on to the president's confidence that everything would be all right. I am Sumaya Abubakar. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Good morning, my dear.
Good morning to you. It's glad to have you back.
Of course, thank you.
It's actually looking very, very cozy in the nation's capital today. Everything seems quiet and a lot of people are just relaxing and getting on with the trends. I know it's hard, but we're just hanging there and get by as much as we can. And it's a beautiful, beautiful Tuesday morning, the second day of the week. Like I said yesterday, lots of people argue Sunday started the week. So yes, working week for most people.
Yeah.
And it's the 21st of October 2023. How time flies.
Indeed.
We started 1st of October and now we're on the 24th.
It was just
day.
just like recent, and just now it's the end of the month, approaching the end of the month, which is something that would say we're grateful to be alive for.
Exactly. Exactly.
All right, now let's take a look at the headlines this morning. The FEC approves constitution of Humanitarian Poverty Alleviation Trust Fund.
CSOs, IPAC seek new electoral act, INEC unbundling.
And financial autonomy, the parliamentary workers threaten nationwide strike.
Now let's go beyond the headlines now. Let's bring you some of the details. And now the Federal Executive Council, FEC, has approved the establishment of the Humanitarian and Poverty Alleviation Trust Fund to cater for the various humanitarian needs and take relief to the vulnerable population in the country. The council, which was chaired by the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu at the council chambers of the State House, also approved the application for a $3.45 billion World Bank financing for various projects spread across 5 memoranda. Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, Dr. Betta Edu, who briefed journalists after the week's FEC meeting, which was the third by the Tinubu's administration, also disclosed that the newly approved trust fund will be running on an annual $5 billion revenue projected to be pulled from various sources. She said that the fund is a flexible form of financing that can help the government get contributions from the private sector, development partners, individuals, philanthropic individuals, and other innovative forms of crowdfunding and pulling of funds together for emergency response to humanitarian crisis in Nigeria.
Away from that, the Inter-Party Advisory Council and civil society organizations have called for the unbundling of the Independent National Electoral Commission for effectiveness and coverage of every aspect of elections. They made the call in Abuja at the Electoral Reform Roundtable with theme Unpacking Nigeria's 2023 General Elections and Prospect for Electoral Reforms, organized by the Kofi Annan Foundation and Yaga Africa. They also called for the amendment of the 2022 Electoral Act to provide for full electronic transmission of election results, arguing that the present law giving INEC options when it comes to election result transmission is not the best. Executive Director of Yaga Africa, Samson Itodo, said the legal framework for the elections in Nigeria needs to be revoked because the election has shown that there are inconsistencies in the law. The chairman of IPAC, Engineer Yabagi Sani, said Nigeria is too large for INEC to cover every aspect of the elections.
Now let's move on to this news that says the Parliamentary Staff Association of Nigeria has announced plans to shut down both national and state assemblies tomorrow if their demands for financial autonomy for the state assemblies remain unmet at the end of the 7-day ultimatum issued. And the union is demanding the immediate implementation of financial autonomy from the governors for state assemblies in line with the provision of the 1999 Constitution. According to a letter of notice addressed to the chairman of the Nigerian Governors Forum and chairman Forum of Speakers and the Department of State Security Services, the workers said they had earlier issued 21 days strike notice. In September, the workers issued a 21-day strike notice signed by the acting Secretary General of the association, where he stated that state governors have failed to implement financial autonomy at the state houses of assembly despite numerous letters to the effect. And this is something that should be taken care of as soon as possible. I remember 2 years ago, I covered a protest, I think in the National Assembly complex here around the Jabi axis, demanding for the same thing. And it just goes on and on and on. I hope that, the Tinubu administration, we have a new government now, will be able to address some of these issues before they get out of hand.
Indeed. All right, away from that, let's take a look at the packages this morning. It says the Supreme Court on Monday reserves the judgment of appeals filed by the presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, Atiku Abubakar, and that of Labour Party candidate Peter Obi, challenging the judgment of the Presidential Election Petition Court that upheld the victory of Bola Ahmed Tinubu of the All Progressive Congress, APC, in the February election. The Apex Court justices, led by Justice Inyang Okoro, also strikes out an appeal by the Allied People's Movement, the APM, just as it hears the application of the former vice president to admit fresh evidence against President Tinubu. Trust TV's Shafiu Suleiman reports.
Behind me is the Supreme Court, which is Nigeria's apex court. It has reserved judgment on the appeals filed by the major frontline presidential candidate in a February presidential election in Nigeria. The candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Atiku Abubakar, and his Labour Party counterpart, Peter Obi. Both of the parties are before the Supreme Court, challenging the outcome of the Presidential Election Court on this matter. They have various grounds. But one of the newest grounds was, of course, attempt by the People's Democratic Party, PDP, to admit, if you like, or get admitted evidence arising from its discoveries from the Chicago State University concerning the certificates of the incumbent president, Bola Ahmed Tinubu. On both appeals, the Supreme Court had listened to both parties' arguments and reserved judgment. While it struck out the appeal by the APM, the APR, which was brought forward in contention of the ruling or judgment concerning allegation of double nomination by the vice presidential candidate, now vice president of Nigeria, Kashim Shettima. The Supreme Court in this instance said it cannot sit on an appeal determined. So that means sitting on a decision that has been taken by the same court. It urged the parties to withdraw the suit, which they did, and then eventually it was struck out by the Supreme Court. Now, the panel of justices of the Supreme Court, led by Justice Inyang Eko, have reserved judgment on the substantive matter, that is on the two major appeals, that of the PDP and the Labour Party. It is for a date to be communicated to the parties in due course. And on the admissibility or otherwise of the new evidence, the Supreme Court has said that it is going to deliver ruling on that particular matter alongside the judgment it reserved. From the Supreme Court here in Abuja, Nigeria's capital, Shafiu Suleiman, Trust TV News.
Recent development there at the court. But right now, we'll take a short break. When we return, we'll start a discussion this morning, and it revolves around the Supreme Court and the justices that they are beckoning at the moment, they're down by 11 justices. Statutorily, they're supposed to have about 21. But we'll look at the issues when we return from this break. Stay with us as Daybreak on Trust Television.
Are you interested in the latest news and developments in Nigerian politics, policy, governance, and other critical national issues? Look no further than Daily Politics on Trust TV. Our panel of experts and key people in government provide in-depth analysis and commentary on the biggest stories in Nigerian politics.
And 33.3 million Nigerians are suffering from multidimensional poverty. It's a much calmer Buhari than the Buhari who was in the khaki uniform.
Naira to Naira exchange rate is higher anywhere in the world. The Naira is higher than dollar exchange rate. So you want to choose central bank governor you're doing, you must do it fast.
Number of casualties we have had, we shouldn't have had. Security as far as Nigeria is concerned, we have wronged.
From the inner workings of government to the latest on legislation, rule of law, implementation, and democracy, we have you covered. Don't miss out on the latest political news and discussion. Tune in to Daily Politics, weekdays on Trust TV, your source for reliable and unbiased coverage of Nigerian politics.
The Nigerian Senate has confirmed the appointment of Olayemi Cardoso as
House of Representatives.
Following extreme economic reforms of fuel
charge of the Semi-Command of the Nigeria Customs Service.
For the 10th National Assembly enhanced.
One after the other, the 23 Federal High Court justices take their oath of
Offered this council while granting audience.
Trillion naira from the subsidy.
And FIFA has confirmed. Spain, Portugal, and Morocco has been named as the co-host.
It was never a consensus. We did all our best. You see, in politics, you give your contribution to the best of your ability.
If you want, I'll forward to you this statement. You go to this bank and verify.
But there are people who say not spending money is not about you
in itself. Let me finish.
Well, there's so much to be done.
Let me finish. Now, you don't allow me to explain myself.
The recent development shows abductions are now a factor of informants embedded in community.
It's not about the people of Katsina to say that, no, during my administration I was able to stop insecurity. No, it's about collective responsibility for all of us.
And what we should ask ourselves is not what has been seen, is the life better? Are there more people who are unemployed who are not become employed? Is the level of corruption has gone down? Is there inclusion? All those issues.
We're actually a gas country with associated oil. Our focus has always been on oil, that we have never paid significant attention to gas.
To do it effectively, we need to have honest conversation with ourselves. Government needs to come down from its high horse and communicate with the people and build trust.
There must be a solution. We cannot continue this way. They must come back to the table and agree. So whose child will do higher education? All these children that sit for jam, they want to go to higher institution.
But just a short while ago you were saying that why bring 10 children when you cannot cater for them? So why bring more universities when you cannot cater for the existing?
Welcome back to Daybreak Extra on Trust Television. Now, the Supreme Court in Nigeria, as is most countries around the globe, is the highest judicial authority in the country. It is often referred to as the court of last resort because its judgments are final and cannot be subjected to any review by another court. Now, according to the 1999 Constitution of Nigeria, Section 230, subsection 2, the Supreme Court of Nigeria shall consist of the Chief Justice of Nigeria and such number of justices of the Supreme Court not exceeding 21, as may be prescribed by an act of the National Assembly. The Constitution gives exclusive jurisdiction to the Supreme Court over disputes between the Federation and the state or between states, as well as jurisdiction to hear and determine appeals from the Court of Appeal. The Supreme Court shall have such original jurisdiction as may be conferred upon it by any act of the National Assembly.
But as many have observed now, including the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Olukayode Ariwola, the Supreme Court is always under pressure due to the number of cases it is expected to handle and the manpower at the disposal. So speaking in November 2022 at the investiture of 62 new senior advocates of Nigeria in Abuja, the Chief Justice of Nigeria said, "A viable fact on judicial activities in various jurisdictions across the globe still emphatically confirm that the Supreme Court of Nigeria remains the busiest and most hardworking Supreme Court in the world." So with a staggering 6,884 cases at the Apex Court, as the CGN noted, the number of justices to determine the cases is depleting, thereby slowing down the wheels of justice. And as the legal maxim goes, justice delayed is justice denied. So this morning, we will discuss the depletion of judges by the Apex Court from 11, which will drop to 10 as another justice of the court retires on the 27th of October, and the effective service delivery. So to discuss all of this, to unpack it and get us to understand how this will affect our judicial system and the number of cases, just like the Chief Justice of Nigeria has pointed out, we have in the studio Barrister Mitiyu Akinsanya and Mr. Chuks, John Chuks, like we call him, lead judiciary desk of the Daily Trust newspaper. Gentlemen, I'll say legal luminaries. Yes. Good morning to you and welcome to the show.
Good morning. It's a pleasure.
Good morning.
It's a pleasure to have you join us on the show this morning. Now, let's take a look at this holistically. Statutorily, we are supposed to have 21, and now we have 10, 11. What does this say for the judiciary in Nigeria?
Okay, thank you very much. I think what's important is to note that this provision of not more than 21 justices for the Supreme Court is the same provision we had in the 1979 Constitution. And so between 1979 and 1999, that's about close to more than 20 years, we still retained that same provision. And for those who inserted the provision in the 1979 Constitution, they thought that at that time, that was at least the maximum we require to be able to deal with all of the cases coming from the High Court to the Court of Appeal to the Supreme Court, or even the cases that the Supreme Court has original jurisdiction over. But now fast forward to 1999, we still retain 21. Ordinarily, if you ask me, I would say by 1999, we even ought to have amended that provision to even go beyond 21. And for that 21, between 1999 and now, I do not think there is any time that we have even filled the quota. And the implication of that for the country is that cases linger at the Supreme Court. As we speak now, if you if you file a matter at the Supreme Court today, you are not certain that that matter will be heard in the next 5 years.
Does this number is from a month ago? Does it even tally with what we have now? Over 6,000 cases pending at the Supreme Court.
I'm sure you will have more than that now, because again, almost all of the matters heard across high courts all over the country that also goes to the Court of Appeal most of those matters also end up at the Supreme Court. Land cases, cases by investors who are here who have issues either with regulatory bodies, government agencies, or with other business partners. You have a bulk of all of those cases lying before the Supreme Court. And because there is also no limit to the kind of cases that go before the Supreme Court, except, of course, on election matters. There are matters that do not get to the Supreme Court. But most electoral matters end up at the Supreme Court. Governorship, the presidential election end up at the Supreme Court. All land matters, all criminal matters, all of them may end up at the Supreme Court. So that accounts for the reason why you have so many cases before these very few justices of the Supreme Court. And you know the Supreme Court also sits in 5 or 7. So on a particular matter, you have a minimum of 5 justices sitting on that particular matter. And what that will tell you is like the matters that are on appeal, the presidential election matters that are on appeal now, you have about 3 of them. So what that will mean is that because they have to sit 7-7 on each of those panels, so what it will mean is that at least 1 justice of the Supreme Court may sit in a minimum of 2 of those matters. And they will have to write their judgment on those matters.
And which take longer time.
Exactly. They have to look at all of the details, the documents they will bring before them, so you know what that means to them. It will take a lot of their energy, it will take a lot of their time, and they have to do it diligently, you know. So it is not an easy job.
Talking about the numbers, there's 6,000 or even more cases pending. Now, Justice Amina Oki, when she retired on September 3rd, 2023, she made a comment about how there was a time that there was a case of someone fighting about, or the state brought someone to court about burning and arson, 12 goats. Where she said such matters, she said she had to whisper to another justice to say, why would they bring such matter to us, as judges of the Supreme Court? I mean, we have more pending case than this. So let me throw this question at you, Chuks. Do you think if they should at least screen some cases whereby at least at some point it should stop just by using the laws, just stop at the appeal court without taking it to the Supreme Court? That way they could have a reduction of numbers. What's your take on that?
Already, like the Learned Council have said, there are cases that don't get to the Supreme Court. Cases like our National Assembly, State Assembly matters that are post-election. They don't have to necessarily get to the Supreme Court. But that apart, every other matter get to the Supreme Court, and as small as even land matters. So there are different approaches that are being developed to arrest these matters at the very lowest levels, like the ADR systems, alternative dispute resolutions, the traditional justice methods that are being developed, and restorative justice methods that try to keep matters at those lower levels and resolve satisfactorily. Because why people proceed to the apex court is due to lack of confidence of the outcomes that they get at the lower courts. So if these new innovations are enhanced and made to be as effective and efficient as they are at the highest courts of the land, I think that will help to reduce the tendency to go there.
Okay, Mr. Chuks, give us a sense on how this is affecting court sittings and court judgment. I remember that almost all of the court sitting for years now, you've been going there, you've been listening, and you've been writing reports about them. So now, as somebody who has observed this over the years, give us a sense on how this is affecting the cases and the judgments from the Supreme Court. Just give us an analysis of that.
Yeah, I think that's 6,800 thereabout cases mentioned. They are just cases. There are motions that are over 9,000. That keep coming up. So what this does is that, these justices, you get there forwards the time 1970s when we had lawyers called to the apex court, like Teslim Elias was a practicing lawyer when he went to the bench. So those ones were a little bit more vibrant and robust. At the Supreme Court, you are almost approaching 60 before you get there. So that has a lot of impact on their ability to concentrate, their ability to churn out research work and decisions. And apart from that, the quality. If you look at a lot of people are talking about the likes of Dike Toby, Justice Oputa, that they were more grounded. When you read their judgments, even if you are a layman, you will be dancing. You just listening to the reading.
Because they feel like due diligence has been done. Due diligence,
because they were born in the law. You know, when people who are born in the law, who have been groomed over time in the system, they become used to it. But what we see here now are people who either they are already overburdened through the process. You know, already, even at the lower courts, there are also challenges of technology. They write on long hands and all that. By the time they get there, and the world has moved away from that. You understand? In those days, because of their foundation in literature and then logic, so they can flow. But now you need not just literature and logic alone. You need even technology. You need to have your adepts at use of technological infrastructure. These are not happening.
Okay. Mr. Chuks, I want you to hold your thoughts there because we have a lot of time where you have to make some of these assertions plain to us. Now, Barrister Akinsanya, give us a sense now, because you mentioned something very important, and I feel like a legal counsel, some of these cases find their way to the Supreme Court, which necessarily shouldn't be there in the first place. Now, give us a sense now, what is the fault of all of this? Is it the individuals or is it the counsel now that should have taken due diligence to work on this matter before it gets to Supreme Court? Because as it stands, we do not have enough justices to sit on this matter and make the right kind of judgment that everybody will be joyous when they get to hear about it. What is the issue around all of this?
Okay, I think what we must first understand is that if the law, the Constitution, gives an individual the right to appeal. So it's a right that has not been taken away by the law. So if the law says in land matters you can appeal from the High Court to the Court of Appeal to the Supreme Court, the law has not taken it away from you, so it's a right. And since it's a right, you can decide to exhaust that right until you get to the Supreme Court. So for any matter that the law has said, or you have the right to appeal up to the Supreme Court, any individual can exercise that right. So if I'm a lawyer, I will of course advise my client to exercise that right, since it's a right that's been given to him or her by the law. And that's why I think at this point, what we must begin to do is to look at all of these cases and then see cases that need not get to the Supreme Court. In some countries, in fact, it's only constitutional matters that get to the apex courts. But here in Nigeria, constitutional matters, land matters, and all of them get to our Supreme Court. So we may now have to look at our laws again. We may have to look at the Constitution again and say, so matters should end at the Court of Appeal. So matters should end at the Supreme Court. Or if so matters will go to the Supreme Court, then they have to be with the leave of the court that heard the matter last. So maybe the Court of Appeal will have to grant leave for parties to be able to appeal. So we need to look at all of our laws again and then see how we can limit the number of cases going to the Supreme Court. That's on one hand. On the second hand is the fact that the NJC needs to work closely with the executive, with the president, to ensure that he at least appoints the maximum of 21. We have 10 now, and there are still about 11 vacancies. And there are so many qualified lawyers out there.
Because I was going to ask, I said, is it that we do not have individuals or legal practitioners who can take up that responsibility of being justices of the Supreme Court?
There are so many who are eager to go to the Supreme Court. I'm even sure if you even get some lawyers who will tell you they're ready to do it without being paid. Yes, because
do it well?
Yes, do it very well without really waiting to be paid so much or waiting to get all of those allowances that are attached to it, because it's an honor to be at the Supreme Court. And then you have so many lawyers or so many justices of the lower courts, the Court of Appeal or High Courts, that are more than qualified to be at the Supreme Court. In fact, even the National Assembly at this point should be looking at even removing that 21 numbers. We should be talking about 40, 50 justices of the Supreme Court. Because you have about 36 or 37 high courts in the country. You have various divisions of the Court of Appeal all across the country, but you have only one Supreme Court. And all matters from all of these courts across the country, they may end up at the Supreme Court. So you can't have 21 justices and expect them to do magic. And that's where I differ from what Mr. Chuks said earlier on. In the days of Justice Nikki Toby or in the days of Teslim Elias, they were not so burdened as these justices are. They do not have so much work to do as these justices
Yes, he also mentioned something like
that. Yes. So at that time, how many were we in Nigeria? Perhaps we were less than 100 billion. In 1979, perhaps we're not even up to 200 million. But I'm sure now we are more than 300 million. And we have more litigations in our courts. Even if you go to the high courts and you see the way matters move, if you have a matter, for instance, in Abuja at the FCT High Court, I'm sure from the beginning of the matter to judgment, you may spend 4 or 5 years to get judgment if the matter is fast.
Now, give us a sense on how this is taking a toll on legal practitioners now. Because this doesn't just concern the individuals or the legal entities that have matters to be presided over at the Supreme Court for judgment to be delivered, but on the legal practitioners as well, because you have a lot of cases, you have clients who are on your neck asking for how far this case.
In fact, not just the lawyers, it affects those of us who are lawyers, but it also has its ripple effects even on the economy. If any investor comes to Nigeria and he or she wants to invest and he or she has an issue with partners or with regulatory agencies of government, he or she will want that matter to be dealt with in the shortest possible time. But if an investor comes to Nigeria and, say for instance, he applied for a license and he or she does not get that license and he or she goes to court and the matter lingers for the next 10 years in court, the investor will pack his things and leave. So it also has an effect even on our economy. It has an effect on our social lives. Even when it comes to public interest litigation, litigations for public interest, and you file in court, and you're challenging something that needs to be decided within the next 2-3 months, and it stays for the next 10 years. By the time the court will give decision on it, it's already overtaken by events. So you have a lot of instances like that. So it's affecting our daily lives. And that's why you also find impunity everywhere. They will tell you, go to court, because perhaps they know when you get to court, it will take so long a time before you get.
Quick one, Barrister Akinsanya, talking about the amount of how long these judgments take. Let's talk about the legal maxim of justice delayed is justice denied. The last time we saw a president, sworn in new judges, it was during President Muhammadu Buhari, and we saw judges leave, based on retirement or even death from 2020 to 2023, and they haven't been replacement. So now I want you as a legal practitioner to tell us if there is any law that says there has to be a stipulated time to to get more judges, because justice delayed is denied, and we all agree that the justices right now cannot handle all the cases at the right time.
Yes, in fact, if I'm the president of the country today, I will ask the NJC to recommend to me justices that should be appointed, because you have about 11 vacancies. In the next 1 week or thereabout, we'll have 11 vacancies. If I'm the sitting president today, I will demonstrate my love for the people of Nigeria, and I will demonstrate my love for the justice sector by asking the NJC to send to me names of 10 justices to be appointed, and I will send them immediately to the Senate for confirmation. Because there is no law that says you must wait for 3 months. Any time the president can look at it and say, oh, this is a problem. And because it's a problem, whether we like it or not. And it has a way of even affecting even what the president does. So if the president is saying he is for the rule of law and he wants Nigerians to get justice, I honestly think at this point, the president should see this as an emergency And he should quickly ask the NJC to send him those 11 names and send them to the Senate for confirmation. And this is something that can be done in the next 1-2 weeks. And we have our full 21 justices at the Supreme Court.
Indeed.
And then perhaps even give a mandate to say, I want you to clear all of these backlogs. And in the next 2 years, perhaps they will work to clear the backlogs and ensure that if you file a case today, you can be sure that in the next 3 months, the matters will be done with. The matters that were filed by all of the appellants in the presidential election matters, the matters were heard yesterday. But when were those matters filed? I'm sure they were filed in less than 3 weeks ago. So we can have this even in all of other cases, not just in political electoral matters.
Indeed. All right, thank you very much, Barrister Mitiyu Akinsanya, for sharing your thought with us this morning. We understand you have a court case by 9 a.m., so we have to let you go now so you meet up with the time. But thank you. But we'll still have Mr. Chuks here with us when we return. Daybreak will return in a bit. We'll take a breather. Do not go. Stay with us.
The Nigerian Senate has confirmed the appointment of Olayemi Cardoso as
House of Representatives,
following extreme economic reforms of fuel
Charge of the Semi-Commander of the Nigeria Customs Service.
For the 10th National Assembly enhanced.
One after the other, the 23 Federal High Court justices take their oath of
this council while granting audience.
trillion naira from the subsidy.
FIFA has confirmed. Spain, Portugal, and Morocco has been named as the co-host.
It was never a consensus. We did all our best. You see, in politics, you give your contribution to the best of your ability.
If you want, I'll forward to you this statement. You go to this bank and verify.
But there are people who say not spending money is not about you.
I'm coming. Let me finish.
Well, there's so much to be done.
Let me finish. Now, you don't allow me to explain myself.
The recent development shows abductions are now a factor of informants embedded in community.
It's not about the people of Katsina to say that, no, during my administration I was able to stop insecurity. No, it's about collective responsibility for all of us.
And what we should ask ourselves is not what has been seen, is the life better? Are there more people who are unemployed who are not become employed? Is the level of corruption has gone down? Is there inclusion? All those issues.
We're actually a gas country with associated oil. Our focus has always been on oil, that we have never paid significant attention to gas.
To do it effectively, we need to have honest conversation with ourselves. Government needs to come down from its high horse and communicate with the people and build trust.
There must be a solution. We cannot continue this way. They must come back to the table and agree. So whose child will do deny education? All these children that sit for jam, they want to go to higher institutions.
But just a short while ago you were saying that why bring 10 children when you cannot cater for them? So why bring more universities when you cannot cater for the existing?
Welcome back to Daybreak on Trust Television. And before we went on a break, we're talking about the depletion of the justices, from the Supreme Court. And we still have with us the Daily Trust judiciary desk, of course, Mr. John Chuks, a lead. I'm already giving you doctor. Hopefully we'll get there. We're getting there. He's actually the lead judiciary desk of the Daily Trust newspaper. Indeed. Okay, let's talk about, from your perspective as a reporter, gathering all the happenings from the Supreme Court. Now, talking about how lengthy, a particular case can take, a longest time. How are you even coping, you as a reporter from the Supreme Court? How do you take to follow up a case, a case that could take, who knows, a long time. They keep adjourning it. What is the situation from your angle?
This is a very interesting question because we're always faced with this in the course of our work. The judiciary correspondents have become sort of encyclopedias following some of these cases. Like yesterday, there was this judgment in the UK about Nigeria.
The PNID case, and we won.
I did something on the timelines because I've been with the case, like 8 timelines. When this thing started, even when Nigeria won the first case, £1.5 million, and then yesterday when Nigeria now won outright. So you have to keep these diaries because they will come handy. But of course, we are challenged because sometimes you forget, it has to be really, really of public interest for you to keep track. They keep adjourning. You come this day, oh, the judge is going on medical, or the judge is having issue, or there's a conference. So you have to now ask what next date you take. So just like lawyers have diaries, we have diaries as well. So it's difficult. You spend a lot of transport. You have to keep your notes. If you lose your notes, you have to start either checking it on the net or asking people who may know about it. So it's tasking. So we would like a situation where in other jurisdictions that are developed, are advancing their legal system, you could decide some of these cases within 6 months or 1 year. In the procedures of FCT, they even mentioned 1 year in the civil
But isn't 1 year a long time, for justice to be served?
No, it's not a long time because you need, like they will say 30 days, enter if there is a new process filed. Normally, they will give 30 days for the respondent to reply, and these other people will take their time, so usually less than the same 30 days to respond, and then they will now come into argument. All those things will require time to go through. The judges have a lot of responsibility to sort through the evidences that have been tendered, and most times they have other matters waiting, so they don't just concentrate on one case. In a day, they have like 20 cases on the cost list. They may take 10 or 15. But the attention they give to one is the same they give to another. So if they use 1 year, it's still good. Because when the counsel was talking, he said the investors lose confidence after some time. They say, these people, they are not serious. But if you do it within 1 year and it's certain that it will be determined in 1 year, of course, people can wait it out. It's just 12 months within which the justice of the matter will be determined. I think that's fair enough. That's realistic.
Give us a sense now, because I followed you to court a few times, and most of these cases at the Supreme Court, there are breaks, there are recess. This judge has gone on recess, and you have to wait for a very long time. A judiciary reporter in the Federal Capital Territory, because this is where the apex court is situated, will tell you how these things go. Now that we have a reduction of all of these judges to about 10 now, and in the coming days, if nothing is done about it, it takes a toll on the judiciary system as a whole. And now streamlining it to the judiciary correspondents now, who have to bear the brunt of all of this, because the general public is depending on what you're going to feed them. The court doesn't do hearings publicly. It's the journalist who has to do all of this. Give us a sense on how this is taking a toll on you, penning down some of your findings from the court.
Okay, let me just stop small on the justices. You mentioned that the justices, that they will now need to, either if they don't feel it, to take it to. Yes. Already we have 28 cases coming from the governorship. I think 28 governorship elections.
Yes.
Plus the presidential. So as of today, there will be no rotation in the Supreme Court. They need to, if you are handling this, there's specialization everywhere.
Yes.
Okay, I'm handling the case of APM or PDP or LP. You read about it and you concentrate. But now you're going to read about Nasarawa, you're going to read about Abia, you're going to read about Kogi. So it's overwhelming. You understand? And they have to do that between now and December for the governorship. The presidential has to be decided between now and November 5th. So that's a lot of time, a lot of stress on their concentration. Then for the reporter, the same thing. You are just leaving the court. The next day, this matter is up again. You run again. You understand? You have to leave the house very early. Sometimes you don't have a breakfast. And then you have to be there they'll keep rising. Oh, we are going on break. You will be there. Sometimes you stay till midnight. We've been in matters till the next day at the Supreme Court.
And even if you're on the desk, you don't rest until you file in this report.
You have to determine, because sometimes one of the challenges of that court reporting is that if you mislead or misrepresent the court, it could lead to even jail, because that would amount to contempt. So you have to be attentive. You have to be very methodical in the procedure. Any lapse could be very costly. So the judicial reporter is also affected as much as the justices. The justices are even, people are saying they're even better remunerated, and they even have research assistants, but the journalists you have to transcribe and subsume all those data in a very short, long form, maybe 500 words or less, all those documents. So without any research assistants like the justices. So it's very tasking. You just have to be on the top of your game. And though sometimes lapses happen, but it doesn't have to be regular.
Talking about remuneration, I remember that in a television interview, I think it was an Arise, the NBA president was talking about the remuneration of the Supreme Court justices versus that of the Chief Justice of Nigeria kind of differ, and they receive about 750,000 naira monthly, and the Chief Justice of Nigeria is receiving about 450 to about 500,000 naira. Now, we might have in the coming days now justices saying that, this remuneration, we're doing the job of like additional 11 people. And this remuneration now might not be enough because we have to take care of ourselves health-wise. We have to do this, we have to do that. And we have to meet up timelines that's been set for us. Now, give us a sense on how this could pan out, or this could affect some of the cases that we're expecting judgments in the following days. Now, we see that all attention has been turned to post-election matters, taking a toll on the other matters. Give us a sense on how this is going to affect in the coming days.
Okay, the remuneration of justices of the Supreme Court, there's been a lot of this back and forth debate that is too mega. But I think none of them takes home anything beyond 3 million. I don't know 400,000, but if you accumulate everything that they are entitled to, it could be up to 3 million. Although people are saying it's too small, because if you go to some parastatals and commissions, there are people who could earn up to that, who are not even at the higher echelons. So you look at the justices, why wouldn't they earn that, especially when their role is tempting? You understand? People want to reach out to a justice.
So does it mean that those figures we hear are not the actual figures? Because we were in the industrial court when at the court of, I think the Court of Appeal judges were talking about their remuneration now. So does it mean that the figures we hear on the news is not the actual figure when you put plus and plus together at the end of the month?
It's not. In fact, there are a lot of perks. That is why a lot of people say, let me just go to the bench and relax. You go there, you have a lot of entitlements. You have security, you have house help, you have office assistants, you have vehicles. You could have up to 2 changes. They even give them, like, every year you have an SUV being given to you. And then you have basic salary, you have other allowances, medical, overseas in a year. You have a lot of money for research, newspapers, internet, so many things that you won't spend out of pocket that are provided by the judicial system. So, but yet it may still not be up to 3 million. All these packages may still not be up to 3 million. So that's why a lot of people are saying that is quite small compared to the work.
Even though some people might be on the opposite side. I mean, to whom much is given, much is expected. So let's talk about the main problem now. They are not enough. Okay, a lot of them are already retiring, and you as a journalist, as a spectator, someone who witnessed the proceedings of the court, do you think that these judges are in the right state, to make the judgment that's at the end of a judgment, considering they are not much and there is exhaustion? We know how exhaustion can take a toll on humans. So as someone, tell us what you think about the outcome of
I actually, honestly, I doubt they will be in the right state of mind to deliver. Like yesterday, what happened, the APM, Allied People's Movement, their petition, their appeal, the Supreme Court presiding Justice Enyan Okoro was, specifically countering the lawyer about bringing the appeal to the court. When you look at those kind of intervention from the Judex, there is something beyond just the paperwork. It's more like, don't bring stress to us when there is no need to bring the stress. They were saying that we've had this matter on May 26th, which is on the alleged double nomination of the Vice President Kashim Shettima. So why are you still bringing it on appeal? But if you look at the case brought by APM, they were not talking about just double nomination, they were talking about invalid. That the period within which that substitution ought to be made and lapsed when it was made. So if they had taken their time to study what was brought, maybe they would
have seen
a different decision.
Yeah, exactly.
So most times they don't just want you to waste their time. You understand? They say, why are you bringing this? The lawyers have said this on this. Why are you, trying to bring it this? Lawyers too exploit these technicalities. So there are a lot of challenges they face, and there are a lot of impacts that is having on the justice delivery in the country. There is no doubt about it.
Do you agree with the lawyer that said that we ought to have had more than 21 justices even before now? Do you agree with that?
No, I have my own reservation about that.
All right.
You look at the country's revenue. Can it sustain that? And there are a lot of suggestions that, like in the United States, the justice of the Supreme Court in Washington, there are just 9. There are 9. Of course, the U.S. has Supreme Court in all the 50 states.
Other states.
You understand? So people are saying we could decentralize the court to 6 zones, the Supreme Court. In China, I think they have 6.
Are you thinking we should go that path?
Yeah, it's part of restructuring. Even the current aviation minister, when he was advocating to be an attorney general, he said he will push for the decentralization to 6 zones, so that some of these cases, like land cases, you only bring very constitutional or cases involving capital punishment to Abuja. But other cases could be handled at the
different geopolitical zones. We have this apex court also situated.
So when you sieve it at that level, maybe here you just have maybe 1,000 or 500 cases. That will be manageable for those at Abuja. In countries like Kenya, South Africa, they have the Supreme Court. They also have constitutional courts. So Supreme Court can handle other civil matters, but when it comes to constitutional issues like revenue, like when Rivers State took the federal government to court over the tax regime, it was supposed to be a constitutional interpretation. You go to constitutional court, not the Supreme Court, because Supreme Court is handling both civil and criminal matters. So you take constitutional matters to the Supreme Court, like the presidential election. In Kenya, is Supreme Court, constitutional court, and they do it within 1 month. In Ghana, the same thing. 1 month they've decided, because you don't need to do a trial of 180 days and then another 60 days at the Supreme Court. You don't need to do that. So they need to decentralize this. Then you can even make the Supreme Court 9, like in the US, or even 5, because it has to be odd numbers all the time. So why do you need 40, 50? No, it will still be the same. A lot of even redundancy, overlaps, and inefficiencies that may go with them.
Indeed. Well, I mean, I really want to know, your take on how long, because I think I asked this question to Barrister earlier about taking long in order to replace judges that have left or retired, or maybe some such situation happened like death. So as a correspondent, how long do you think a president should take in order to just fill up the space?
I don't think it should be more than 1 week or 2. Once you learned that the numbers have gotten to 5 people retiring, or they should be up to date with the...
So whose fault is it? Is it the NJC?
Yeah, well, some lawyers are saying it is the NJC. Some lawyers say that these guys are deliberately not filling their quota. But there is no proof to that, because there are a lot of rigors that it will take to... But why a lot of lawyers believe that they don't want to fill those quotas, there was a time Buhari had to impose 4 at once. Buhari, the former president,
on the NJC.
He just said, I need 4. I think he appointed 4 at once and added. You understand? It was so fast.
But isn't that being proactive? Because, yes, we had a deficit, and he had to fill up those deficits, and that's why that is made. Just on the flip side, if you look at it, don't you think that was what he did? And don't you think that it had a significant impact on, dispensation of justice at the apex court in Nigeria?
It did have, because they as of then, the process of selecting them, promoting them from the appellate court was on, but Buhari accelerated the process and got them into the Supreme Court.
Okay, so don't you think that the process of selecting these judges could take a lot of time? Considering that we don't have time.
No, lawyers are saying that already there is a reform going on, that they can bring in those in the bar to come to the bench. So that wouldn't take more than 1 week. You just ask them to submit their CVs. You go through the CVs, call them for interviews. By now, we would have seen the short list. So the next week, you forward to the president forwards to the Senate. Senate will do it within 2-3 days, and they are all justices. It shouldn't take more than 2 weeks maximum. But nobody understands why it has to be this rigorous. The records of these people are in public domain, and a lot of people want to see them on the bench. We know some of them are even into academic research as well. So they could do this job, very conveniently.
And very soon we'll be seeing another over 50 people being conferred as senior advocate of Nigeria. These are news that we're getting.
Capable hands. That's not the issue.
Yeah. And then there are some of these points that, as you raise this issue of senior advocates, also know that some of the lawyers who advise their clients to proceed to the Supreme Court, for you to become a senior advocate of Nigeria, you must have practiced at the Supreme Court and don't matter from a lower court to the Supreme Court a certain number of cases. So it's a condition. So a lot of lawyers will take up public interest matters and on their own spend their money taking it to the Supreme Court. Just let your matter enter the Supreme Court. You will now have to cite it. That these are the arguments I made to developing the law.
I would really would love to have take of lawyers on this.
Yeah.
But thank you so much, Mr. John Chuks, for your insights this morning.
He's been seeing a lot of dramas happening.
Of course, when you get to the court, I think you should be in the court a few times, and you really know. During my days on the judiciary desk, it wasn't really easy. You go to court, spend long hours. He has been in the court years, even before I joined, and it really took a toll. And it's interesting. It's very interesting. Some of the terms that are used, and you really get into it as if you're practicing law. That's how much interesting this could be. But thank you so much for being on the show today. We appreciate your contribution.
Thank you.
And that's how we will be calling it a close on the discussion segment of Daybreak this morning. In case you missed it, all you have to do is go a little bit backwards if you're streaming live on the YouTube page, and you will get all of the conversation, all of the insight that revolves around the number of justices, the limited number of justices that we have. We have about 10, and we needed about 11 to make up the 21 statutorily that we have in the country, and issues around it and how it is affecting the judicial system in the country. And right now, let's take a short break. When we come back, we'll come up with the headlines and the packages that we have for you on Daybreak this morning. Stay with us.
Are you interested in the latest news and developments in Nigerian politics, policy, governance, and other critical national issues? Look no further than Daily Politics on Trust TV. Our panel of experts and key people in government provide in-depth analysis and commentary on the biggest stories in Nigerian politics.
And 33.3 million Nigerians are suffering from multidimensional poverty.
It's a much calmer Buhari than the Buhari who was in the khaki uniform.
Naira to Naira exchange rate is higher anywhere in the world. The Naira is higher than dollar exchange rate. So you want to choose central bank governor you're doing, you must do it fast.
Number of casualties we have had, we shouldn't have had. Security, as far as Nigeria is concerned, we have wronged.
From the inner workings of government to the latest on legislation, rule of law, implementation, and democracy, we have you covered. Don't miss out on the latest political news and discussion. Tune in to Daily Politics, weekdays on Trust TV, your source for reliable and unbiased coverage of Nigerian politics.
Welcome back to Daybreak on Trust Television. Thank you for staying with us. It has been a very interesting conversation with, our learned colleagues and someone who is, a correspondent of the Daily Trust newspaper, talking about the depletion of the justices in the Supreme Court. So right now, my dear, we take a look at the headlines again.
All right, we'll go straight to the headlines and see what's happening. We have the FEC approves constitution of Humanitarian and Poverty Alleviation Trust Fund.
Okay, the CSOs, the IPAC, seek new electoral act and INEC unbundling.
Financial autonomy as a kicker here, and parliamentary workers threaten nationwide strike.
And now the details. The Federal Executive Council, the FEC, has approved the establishment of the Humanitarian and Poverty Alleviation Trust Fund to cater for the various humanitarian needs and take relief to the vulnerable population in the country. The council, which was chaired by President Bola Tinubu at the council chambers of the State House, also approved the application for a $3.45 billion World Bank financing for various projects spread across 5 memoranda. The Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, Dr. Betta Edu, who briefed journalists after the week's FEC meeting, which was the third by the Tinubu's administration, also disclosed that the newly approved trust fund will be running on an annual $5 billion revenue projected to be pulled from various sources. She said the fund is a flexible form of financing that can help the government get the contributions from the private sector, development partners, individuals, philanthropic individuals, and other innovative forms of crowdfunding and pooling of funds together for emergency response to humanitarian crisis in Nigeria.
And now the Inter-Party Advisory Council and the civil society organizations have called for the unbundling of the Independent National Electoral Commission for effectiveness and coverage of every aspect of elections. They made a call in Abuja at the Electoral Reform Roundtable with the theme Unpacking Nigeria's 2023 general elections and prospect for electoral reforms, organized by Kofi Annan Foundation and Yaga Africa. They also call for the amendment of the 2022 Electoral Act to provide for full electronic transmission of election results, arguing that the present law giving INEC options when it comes to election results transmission is not the best. Executive Director of Yaga Africa, Samson Itodo, said the legal framework for elections in Nigeria needs to be revoked because election has shown that there are inconsistencies in the law. The chairman of IPAC, Engineer Yabagi Yassani, said Nigeria is too large for INEC to cover every aspect of the elections.
Away from that, Parliamentary Staff Association of Nigeria has announced plans to shut down both national and state assemblies tomorrow if their demands for financial autonomy for the state assemblies remain unmet at the end of the 7-day ultimatum issued. The union is demanding the immediate implementation of financial autonomy from the governors for state assemblies in line with the provisions of the 1999 Constitution. According to a letter of notice addressed to Chairman of the Nigerian Governors Forum and Chairman Forum of Speakers and the Department of State Security Services, the workers said that they had earlier issued 21-day strike notice. In September, the workers issued a 21-day strike notice signed by the acting Secretary General of the association, where he stated that the state governors have failed to implement financial autonomy at the state houses of assembly despite numerous letters to the effect.
And now let's move on to some packages that we have for you this morning on the show. Now, the Supreme Court on Monday reserves judgment on appeals filed by presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, Atiku Abubakar, and Labour Party candidate Peter Obi challenging the judgment of the presidential election petition court that upheld the victory of President Bola Tinubu in the February election. Now, the Apex Court justices led by Justice Iyang Okoro also strikes out an appeal by the Allied People's Movement, APM, just as it hears the application of former Vice President to admit fresh evidence against President Tinubu. Trust TV's Shafiu Suleiman was there and now reports.
On the appeals filed by the major frontline presidential candidate in a February presidential election in Nigeria. The candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Atiku Abubakar, and his Labour Party counterpart, Peter Obi. Both of the parties are before the Supreme Court, challenging the outcome of the presidential election court on this matter. They have various grounds. But one of the new West ground was, of course, attempt by the People's Democratic Party, PDP, to admit, if you like, or get admitted evidence arising from its discoveries from the Chicago State University concerning the certificates of the incumbent president, Bola Ahmed Tinubu. On both appeals, the Supreme Court had listened to both parties' arguments and reserved judgment. While it struck out the appeal by the APM, the APR, which was brought forward in contention of the ruling or judgment concerning allegation of double nomination by the vice presidential candidate, now Vice President of Nigeria, Kashim Shettima. The Supreme Court in this instance said it cannot sit on an appeal determined. That means sitting on a decision that has been taken by the same court. It urged the parties to withdraw the suit, which they did, and then eventually it was struck out by the Supreme Court. Now, the panel of justices of the Supreme Court, led by Justice Inyang Eko, have reserved judgment on the substantive matter, that is on the two major appeals, that of the PDP and the Labour Party. It is for a date to be communicated to the parties in due course. And on the admissibility or otherwise of the new evidence, the Supreme Court has said that it is going to deliver ruling on that particular matter alongside the judgment it reserved. From the Supreme Court here in Abuja, Nigeria's capital, Shafiu Suleiman, Trust TV News.
Interesting, conversation happening in the Supreme Court, and all eyes are on the judiciary, as Nigerians are saying on that matter. All right, now the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has promised the Nigerian business community that crucial plans have been put in place to improve the foreign exchange liquidity. He spoke on Monday at the opening of the 29th Nigerian Economic Summit, the NES, in Abuja, stressing that his administration would honor every legitimate contract with respect to the nation's foreign exchange obligations. Kende Amodu reports.
President Tinubu at the Nigerian Economic Summit is the Robin of like minds. The two parties here are speaking the same language. So it must be reassuring to the captains of industry gathered to hear the president say that government is not blind to the challenges being faced in the financial markets.
I can only allay these concerns by revealing that we have a good line of sight for the additional foreign exchange liquidity that is required to restore market confidence. And we are going to do that.
President Tinubu is confident that by working with the private sector, financing the $3 trillion national infrastructure stock can be achieved in 10 years and not in 300 years, while the construction of megacities in every geopolitical zone of the size and scale of Lagos can be achieved in 1 decade.
A $1 trillion economy is possible by year 2026. And a $3 trillion economy is also possible within this decade.
Also speaking on the side of government, Minister of Budget and National Planning is harping on better cooperation between government and the private sector, especially in the evolution of development plans.
We are a nation where in every financial year, at least 800 public budgets and 774 in different local governments, 36 budgets in the state and FCT, as well as the federal government. So there is an irreducible minimum of policy linkage and coordination that is required in order for this to deliver the promises that Nigerians hope.
Nigeria's foremost private sector think tank and policy advocacy group is stressing the need for the transformation of the country's economy into one that is competitive, inclusive, and open, which will only be possible if leaders in both public and private sectors work together to achieve identified national values. The first step to take is to tackle the present challenges which may cripple the economy if not addressed.
The low access to and the increasing cost of FX, the high cost of inventory, of imported inputs and operations, coupled with the diversity of taxes, continue to erode business balance sheets, with resultant contraction in production and in employment.
Government has introduced several measures to resuscitate the economy, including the 500 billion naira intervention to support small businesses and the agricultural sector. By January 2024, the new student loan program and consumer credit schemes will have come into effect. The question is, will these interventions go far enough? From the Federal Capital, Kehinde Amodu, Trust TV News.
Now, the operatives of the newly created Katsina State Community Watch Corps have engaged in extensive training in intelligence gathering, surveillance and basic self-defense techniques. Trust TV's Jamil Mabey reports that the move is in a bid to combat the rising wave of banditry and insecurity in Katsina State, ravaged by insecurity. His report.
This initiative aims to combat the increasing banditry and insecurity in the state. Members of the Katsina State Community Watch Corps have undergone training in intelligence gathering, surveillance, and basic self-defense techniques.
To that end, he felt the need to establish this Katsina State Community Watch Corps with the sole aim to augment the existing security asset of the state, because the security asset of the state is not enough to cover almost every area in the state. There are not many. So he decided to bring about this issue of Community Watch Corps.
The Community Watch Corps, which is supported by law and equipped with operational vehicles, are prepared to confront the security situation in the affected areas.
He started with the first frontline 8 local governments. Look, in each of these 8 local governments, some young men were screened and recruited and trained to become the Katsina State Community Watch Corps in order to add off to the existing security personnel we have in the state.
The operatives, many of whom have been directly or indirectly affected by the bandits, are armed with pump-action rifles.
We are not trying to divide these young chaps to go to their various wards or villages to work. They are going to work as a team. Whenever there is any operation, they will go alongside the police, the vigilante for the operation. They are not going to separate.
The Katsina State government started very well. What we are hoping now is consistency.
Over the years, bandits have terrorized communities, especially in the frontline local government areas in Katsina State. They kill, maim, rape, kidnap residents, and loot properties, in addition to crippling economic activities in the northwestern state. Katsina State shares borders with neighboring states and Niger Republic, making it crucial for authorities to find a local solutions to the challenge.
It is a good effort. It is what we call community approach to the banditry crisis or banditry issue.
Security experts are urging other states affected by the banditry to adopt a similar approach for a more comprehensive result. Jamil Mabey, Trust TV, Katsina.
The governor of Katsina State is actually making, a great move. I mean, who better to protect themselves than the citizens of the state?
Intelligence gathering is very important.
Indeed.
And if they can work on intelligence gathering, of course, they'll be able to do a lot unraveling some of this mystery surrounding the insecurity we're facing in that part of the country.
Indeed, because it's still amongst the people that they still get people who give the information to these bandits. So we hope that, we have to commend him and also hope that other governors would take the initiative to do this. All right, away from that, still on security matters, the Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps, NSCDC, has arrested 76 suspects over an alleged plan to contract same-sex marriage in Gombe State. Parading the suspects at the NSCDC headquarters in Gombe, the command's public relations officer, Buhari Saad, said that they were arrested during a homosexual party in the state. Ibrahim Ismail reports.
These are the suspects arrested on the 21st of October by the Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps over alleged plans to contract a same-sex marriage in Gombe State. They were arrested at a homosexual party convened by the prime suspect, Bashir Sani, known as Bushirat Gombe.
In the command's drive and effort to stamp out all forms of crimes and criminalities in the state, including stamping out also bad elements in the society, the command have made arrest of 76 suspects who are suspected homosexuals in the state metro police. They were arrested at Dua Plaza along Bauchi Road, holding homosexuals' birthday. And in that birthday party, there is the intendment to hold a same-sex marriage in the state. So our men, acting on a tip-off, raided that place, and hence the result of having 76 suspects in our custody.
The 76 suspects include 59 males and 17 females, while the NSCDC's evidence indicated that the event was planned same-sex marriage. The alleged homosexual bride, Bushrat Gombe, gives different account. I met two boys in Kano, and they were not aware that I have a birthday party. After I returned to Gombe 2 weeks ago, I planned the event. No one is sponsoring me. This is all I know. 21 of the suspects have confessed to be homosexuals and lesbians. They are expected to be arraigned in court soon. Ibrahim Ismail, Trust TV News, Gombe.
Wow, a lot happening in Nigeria there. Homosexuality to another level. I hope we don't see this happening in other parts of the country, but that's the package we have for you this morning. When we come back from this break, we'll be taking a look at some selected national dailies. Stay with us.
Hello and welcome to Creative Lounge on Trust TV. My name is Ahmed Mohammed Bello, and I'm going to be taking you through my journey as an artist.
Welcome back to Daybreak on Trust Television. And right now we'll take a look at the front pages of the national dailies. So right now we'll start with the Daily Trust newspaper. There below the headmaster, it says, the Supreme Court reserves judgment in Atiku and Obi's appeal against Tinubu, and APM withdraws. You find this on page 11 of the newspaper. Nigeria wins $11 billion debt case against P&ID, right? You'll find this on page 25. Bandits invade Katsina community, kill 9 and abduct 7. Such situation there, you'll find this on page 4. The major story says the federal government automates the forex transactions as naira slumps to 1,220 naira per dollar. Rider says admits illiquidity, pledges to clear forex backlog. It come up with critical reforms. The NESG urges the government help manufacturers with subsidy. That's according to Dunn. You'll find all this on page 4 of the newspaper. Now below there is a really sad, really touching pictorial of what is happening in Gaza, Palestine, the war between Palestine or Gaza, Hamas, and Israel. It says that Gaza City, a woman carries a girl through devastated streets after Israel airstrikes hit the neighborhood of Sheikh Radwad. A really sad one. The Gaza war. Obey international law. Western leaders tell Israel. You'll find this on page 23. At the bottom there, it says intrigue, suspense as police investigates mother of Maiduguri housewives. You'll find this on page 3. FEC okays $3.45 billion loan to finance power and other projects. This you find on page 5. Insurance sector grows from 827 billion naira to 2.33 trillion naira in 2022. You'll find this on page 19.
Now, when you see a lot of this statistics being churned out, and the next question you ask is, how does it concern the ordinary man on the street?
Indeed, when there is no vivid explanations of how these numbers were acquired. Now, these are some of the stories on the Daily Trust newspaper this morning.
All right, let's move on to the Daily Sun, and the lead story says the Supreme Court prepares for poll judgment day. Interesting writings attached to this. Reserves ruling in Atiku Obi's petition against Tinubu. President insists ex-VP's fresh evidence alien to law. APM drops charges after bashing for filing frivolous appeal. You might just want to imagine what happened in the courtroom yesterday. I mean, the Supreme Court. Page 6 has details of that story. And then above that, we have FEC approves setting of a poverty alleviation trust fund. Page 27 has details of that story. And we have just below the lead story, President applauds as Nigeria wins $11 billion PNID case. We've been vindicated. That's coming from AGP. Page 4 has details of that story. A very interesting development there. The fuel scarcity may worsen as 86 firms dump petrol import permit over forex crisis. Wow. Want to get more details of that? Page 22 has more details. And Mba woes investors into juicy opportunities. Ease of doing business policy. Page 2. Get more details. And the federal government will achieve $1 trillion economy target in 2026, $4 trillion in 2035. That's coming from the president of the country. He vows to clear forex backlog. Only time will tell. Get details of that on page 25. Then Israel-Hamas conflict escalates beyond Gaza amid relentless airstrikes. And Israel armed civilian security squad. And they've been fueling international strikes there. You might get details of that on page 26. And a kicker that has autonomy, parliamentary workers to shut national and state assemblies. 27, page 27 of the Daily Sun has details of that. And that's some of the stories on the front page of the Daily Sun newspaper.
Let's take a look at the Daily Times. From the top there, it says the advent drags Akon and the ministry to court. The lead story says $11 billion UK case versus the PNID. Buhari, Malami, Nigeria win after over 5 years. And also commercial courts of England and Wales delivers the verdict. You'll find this major story on page 4 of the newspaper there. Below, there's a pictorial of a flood in Lagos. I mean, a dam broke and it affected that situation. So below the pictorial, we have at NES, Tinubu promises to honor legitimate FX obligations and restore market confidence. You find this on page 2. Crisis rocks FMC Asaba over interns. You find this also on page 2. Senate uncovers fraud in East-West road contracts. Interesting one there. Below there, you'd see Atiku's Obi's appeal over Tinubu's election. Tension drops nationwide as Supreme Court reserves judgment to future date. And Atiku's counsel tutors Justice Olani Bekun on how U.S. legal system works. Apex Court dismisses APM's appeal. At the belt there, it says Adeleke suspends foreign trips by government officials. You find this on page 5. Now, these are some of the stories on the Daily Times.
Let's take a look at the stories on Daily Independent. Right from the top there, we have PNID ruling in favor of Nigeria, a victory for Africa. And that's coming from the #1 citizen of the country, President Tinubu. And it says, as UK court squashes $11 billion arbitral award against Nigeria, and then clears former Lagos AG Shashore of a bribery charge. It started on the front page, scanty details there, but continue on page 7. Tinubu okays Poverty Alleviation Trust Fund with $5 billion yearly. FEC approves a new draft policy to regulate solid mineral sector and ratifies acceptance of $3.4 billion World Bank loan. Scanty details again, front page. Page 7 has details of that. And then the lead story says federal government sets a 10-year target to finance $3 trillion infrastructure stock. Right as attached to the story says, as shows of plans to improve foreign exchange liquidity, says Nigeria expects $10 billion in forex inflows in weeks and commences student loan program in January 2024. Well, let's see how that goes, but get details on page 29. Supreme Court dismisses Adeyemi's appeal against APC, Ododo, and orders appellant to pay respondents 1 million naira each. Page 6 has details of that. And Deputy Governor's impeachment as a kicker. Ondo Assembly again writes CJ to constitute investigative panel. Page 7 has details of that story. Then PDP, Atiku can't get victory through the court, APC vows. Why they're making that bold statement, page 6 might have answer to that. Army has acquired electronic warfare capabilities. COAS, the Chief of Army Staff. All right, I hope I got that. Chief of Army Staff, yes, COAS. Page 6 has details of that. And then parliamentary workers to shut National Assembly, state assemblies tomorrow. That is on Wednesday, the 25th of October 2023. Page 3 has details of that. And let's take a look at this. It says Atiku Obi Tinubu fate hangs in the balance. The Supreme Court reserves judgment on appeals and dismisses APM's appeal against Tinubu. All right, and dismissal of $11 billion award against Nigeria, damning indictment of predatory international investors, says AGF. Get details of all of this on page 6 this morning. And those are the stories in front of the Daily Times, Daily Independent, I beg your pardon, a newspaper this morning.
All right, now we have with us Dr. Theophilus Abba, a program director of the Daily Trust Foundation, here to dissect the front pages of the national dailies this morning. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Doctor, it's always a pleasure to have you join us.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, let's start with the lead story of Daily Trust, where it says that the federal government automates the forex transactions as naira slumps to 1,220 naira. Now, Doctor, in June, there was a speculation that someone was saying that we foresee naira reaching 1,000. And right now, it has even surpassed that particular thoughts and speculation. So what is your take on what the federal government are trying to do now?
Well, it's quite disheartening, for the currency to slump so, so I don't know how to describe it. It's such a, let me say, such a shameful way, because the Naira used to be the currency in the West Africa. Let me put it that way. You see, if you wanted to buy a vehicle, and you went to Cotonou to buy anything, and you have the Naira, it exchanged for a whole lot of CFA.
The CFA is higher than the Naira.
Yes, that's the problem.
Very interesting and dicey.
So if you want to buy anything from any market in the store, you have Naira. So what I hold is sheet of paper. So Naira is not what it's supposed to be. And the question that we've been asking is this: who are those mopping up the dollars? You see, because if we say the dollar is selling for 1,220 Naira, it means that some persons are rushing the dollar. And I'm telling you, I don't think I've bought the dollar in the last 3 years. I've not entered any bureau de change. Say, give me dollar. I don't know if you have bought.
No, I haven't.
I don't know if you have bought. So who are those buying up the dollar? One of the things that I have discovered, that I've noticed anyway, since the money that goes to the state jumped up. It used to be maybe 3 billion per month, 5 billion per month. Now they are getting 10 billion, 20 billion per month. We discovered that the value of the dollar, of the Naira, has plunged. And you see, if you go to those who are familiar with the bureau de change, at the end of every month, when when they share the money, discover that the rush for the dollar is higher. So those who access this dollar are not the ordinary Nigerians, but it's the ordinary Nigerians that suffer. Those who have access to huge funds from government treasury. I don't know who are buying this dollar.
Doctor, we've had reports of people paying school fees using dollar as a legal tender right here in Nigeria.
Yes.
And it could be one of the
But
effects.
that cannot drive up the value of the value of the dollar in this manner. You know what you are talking about, 1,220 to $1. You see, as at May, June, when they came in, it was hovering between 600, 700, and now you are having it at about 500 Naira increase. You understand? So, and it is following a pattern, and that's what I'm looking at, a pattern that indicates the rise in the funds that are available to state government and the collapse of the value of the Naira. Now, which means that those who have the Naira, those who have it in large numbers, are rushing to bureau de change, to mop up whatever dollar that you have. And so it has to keep going up. Because the government is owing some airlines, and I understand that there are some funds that I think government got from some banks to say, okay, give us this dollar, then later we'll pay you. These funds are not been paid up, So it's either that we are using the dollar that we have now to buy refined products, or those who have access to a lot of cash are trying to reduce the quantum of Naira that they have and buying up the dollar, because they know that, or they feel that Naira will keep collapsing, and that's what we are facing. So the other issue is the inflow of the dollar. Government needs to do something urgently, but I'm happy that the president is saying there will be about 10 billion inflow in the next few weeks.
But him clearing the backlog, will it really help in solving the situation at hand?
Well, they may not be able to clear the backlog at a go, but I think they can negotiate, because what we need to do is to make sure that, this dollar is available for those who actually need the dollar. Those who are going on medical trips, those who are maybe paying school fees, then manufacturers who need to import raw materials, and those who import goods that we use every day. But as long as this dollar is mopped up by those who have excess cash, we'll have problem.
Doctor, we saw that the federal government try to intervene in what's happening in the forex market. We saw them withdraw and say, okay, let's just watch from the sideline what is happening. So right now, it's like the government at some point are even a bit confused about what road to take. So what do you think the government needs to do to at least stop the increment or the increase of this naira, to dollar before they even find ways or reforms to make it go down, at least to make the value of naira go up?
Well, I think government is doing what it ought to do. It's just that the inflow, for instance, if we're selling what we call it, the petrol, our crude oil, in the quantity that we ought to sell, we have inflow of dollars. Now, if we are supposed to export 1.8 million barrels per day, and we're exporting maybe 800,000 barrels, we have a shortfall of 1 million barrels per day. That means that about $74 per barrel is not coming in. So if we don't have this inflow, if we don't sell the crude oil, or if we don't have businesses that bring in cash, dollars, then there's little that government can do. The only thing that government could do, maybe borrow, and if you are borrowing from the World Bank or any other international institution, you have a reason why you borrow. Or if you have, you have money in your reserve, that you have dollars in your reserve, you can say, okay, I recall 10 billion from my foreign reserve so that we can use for domestic transactions. Some countries do so. But then, if you withdraw too much from your foreign reserve, you will not be able to finance, imports, because you need this money in the foreign reserve as an assurance for you to be able to finance import by government. So it's a difficult situation. Sincerely, it's quite difficult. But I'm feeling that if there's a measure of control, or who buys these dollars, that is the question that we want answered. Who is buying up these dollars? Why would the dollar so depreciate over? Naira so depreciate over this short space of time. The last 4 or 5 months, about almost getting to 80% depreciation. That is not what it's supposed to be. So we have to ask ourselves, well, government, those who have the powers to ask this question must find out who are those buying up these dollars. Why is it going up every day? Because I'm not buying the dollars, you are not buying the dollars. So this guy buying the dollars, are they actually doing it in our own interest? Because I suspect people are stocking the dollar because they know, they know that the value of the naira is going down. So any money they have, because they have access to a lot of money, they say, look, I can't keep this in naira. Let me go and get dollars. And they go to bureau, they use the contacts they have, maybe in government or at the CBN, to access this dollar, and then the value of the naira keeps going down.
We keep going around and round on that particular situation. Let's take a look at another.
The PNID case, a very, very interesting case there. And when Nigeria made this appeal in 2020, we're expecting, and 3 years later, it was in our favor. And, a lot of talks about this, the foreign reserves, how Nigeria do not have to pay so much money and all of that. What does this mean for Nigeria anyway, moving forward?
Okay, to understand what has happened, we need to look at the sequence of activities. One, some Nigerians brought some funny company called P&ID to come and do a contract on Niger Delta Power Hold. I think it's in Calabar. This company, registered in Ireland, did not have the capital to do this. But they were able to maneuver to get what they call public-private partnership, PPP, with the Nigerian government to say, go and do this job. But they didn't have the capacity to do this job. Now, when they delayed, the governor said, okay, we are revoking this contract. He said, oh, you are revoking this contract. We have invested so amount of money. You are going to pay us. And the terms and conditions talks about heavy fine if government, went back on the contract that they signed with them. And so they went to court. And what happened was this. For some years, the Federal Minister of Justice abandoned the case. They did not pursue the case. They did not go to defend. the case at the arbitration court in London. And so the fines kept mounting until about 3 years ago, when there was an alert that, look, there was going to be an award to the Nigerian government, against the Nigerian government, because you have not gone to defend this case, and the court in London was going to give this case, award them what they requested for. And that meant that if they had awarded that 11 billion to them, you see, the Nigerian asset in London or in any other part of the world that they can access will be used. For instance, if you have foreign reserve, or if you have the NNPC, exporting petroleum, they will just say, okay, we grab it. Now, what happened? Number one, who are the people that will engage on public-private partnership projects in Nigeria? If you look at it, the law, so many stories about people defrauding Nigeria under PPP. One of them is the Yakuta case. Some guys came, were experts in the railway, in steel, blah, blah, blah. They couldn't do it. Government said, we are not doing this business with you again. He went to London. And the London court said, well, we award you this. And that is not the only one. Even the Nigerian passport, we have that issue. The agreement was that, after 5-10 years, build a factory where you can produce the passport in Nigeria. You didn't do it. But Nigerian government cannot do anything. Because if you do anything, they will take you to international court and they will be awarded, damages or whatsoever. So the issue is this: we are lucky, and I'm happy that we are so lucky. 11 billion, it's not funny. It's not small money. So we are lucky that, the court listened to Nigerian government's own plea or argument to say that these guys, we are not honest business people. That was the thrust of the argument. These guys are not honest businessmen. And so you cannot ask us to pay this money to people like this.
But who is to blame for situations like this?
The system.
A lot of things happened where people are awarded contracts, and you keep wondering, these are things that even Nigerians could be able to deliver. But yet we keep bringing a lot of people where you see Chinese people or other nationalities taking over some projects, and it is not delivered at all. So who is to blame?
It's the system. Because there's this fixation among those in government that, if he has a whiter skin, if he says,
does it better.
Not like my own hair, then it's a better human being. And these people come, they with phony companies, not even registered, some of them not even pay tax to us. They come, they say we are registered in one island, and they come, they get all the big businesses, they write proposals, then carry briefcase here and there, and it's because they speak English through the nose, the government officials, they just sign everything for them, and they sign away our Commonwealth. So it's a big problem that we've faced over the years.
Doctor,
the name of privatizing
some of these businesses.
Yes.
Now, Doctor, when you look at this report, now Nigeria is happy, and another person who has been indicted, Mr. Shashore, the senior advocate of Nigeria, which Malami, who is also a senior advocate of Nigeria, he's said that the senior advocate of Nigeria, Mr. Shashore, has been corrupted in his word, and he said his professional work for Nigeria in the arbitration against P&ID. Right now, with this win and all of that, it seems that Mr. Shashore has been vindicated from all of these allegations. Now a lot of people are asking, did we not do our due diligence? Anyway, anybody can be suspected until proven by a court of law that the person is actually guilty. But don't you see, what does this mean moving forward, having people to do arbitration for Nigeria, and because of some of the corrupt practices that a lot of Nigerians have engaged in, it has eluded the trust that we have whenever we're facing the international community. What does this say for us as a Nigerian?
Okay, now, there's something I want us to understand. You see, when there's any case at the arbitration court, you need experts. And some of these experts can just be anybody. If I were a lawyer and the company, knows that, Theophilus knows his onions, you say, okay, lawyer, Theophilus, we're engaging you, to fight on our behalf. Now, in that case, it's no longer about morality. It's about business. I'm given a job to do, and I do the job. Now, these companies, they have bankers, they have lawyers, they have experts in various AI fields. They have accountants, they have tax people who are actually working for them. You see, the money they expected was not going to enter into their pockets alone. Others were going to share with them. So, and in some, this is not the only case. There are several other cases. Nigerian lawyers were actually involved. You know, I mean, going to take the position of those who are against the Nigerian government, those who wanted to pull money from the system, you know, going to London court to speak on their in favor of their arguing their case against the Nigerian government. They've done it. This is not the first time, and I think because it's the legal profession, you know, that is the nature of it. If you are given a brief, you do your job and you get your money, you know. But the problem, I don't blame any lawyer who decided to go and defend P and ID. I don't blame any lawyer. It is the system, because for about 3 years this case was lying down there in the court. The Nigerian government, Malami and others who were supposed to have taken over, they didn't do anything about it, just ignored it. Maybe thinking that, oh, it will just go away like that. It wouldn't go away, you know, because he signed an agreement, whether it was fraudulently signed or not. There was an agreement between the Nigerian government and these companies. And when they get to the court of law, it is this agreement they're looking at. What did you agree to do? You agreed to provide so and so a facility, provide so and so money, give so and so advance. Now, did you do it? If there's evidence that you didn't do it, then you know that you have to convince the court that it was justifiable. Indeed. But if you don't have evidence, you know, it means that the court will rule against you, and that is the law.
Doctor, speaking about the system, let's take a look at the major story on the front page of the Daily Independent, where the federal government sets a 10-year target to finance a $3 trillion infrastructure stock. We saw the president, you know, make lots of promises again in the FEC meeting that happened, where he said that he said with his full chest, because there is confidence that Nigeria would breathe. So what is your take, considering that Atiku Bagudu made mention that the Nigerian economy, you know, is dwindling, that Nigeria is broke? So how do you think that the president would be able to deliver on this promise?
Okay, one thing is that I'm happy that we are now having fake meetings. You know, previously for over 100 days, there was nothing like a fake meeting. We only had one fake meeting. But now, since last week, we have discovered that fake meetings are being held. And that is very great.
Has been moved to Monday.
At least, we now know what is happening in government. We now know that the government is thinking, some persons are taking steps. Then when you talk about the $10 trillion infrastructure plan, it's actually a very good development, you know, because you see, one of the problems we have had is short-term planning, you know, not thinking long-term. If you think long-term,
10 years long-term, Jeff.
10 years is relatively a long time, a long-term project, you know. But the issue is, how are you going to get the funding? Is a question. You know, you are embarking on any project, whether long-term or short-term, how you get the funding is one. But then you can get the funding if you prioritize. Now, infrastructure projects, they are very good. But then, if you get the money for this infrastructure and you don't complete the project, you know that in such a manner that it will generate revenue. If it's a loan that does not generate revenue, you run into trouble. Example, Abuja-Kaduna rail project. Now, you see, the project is supposed to have been generating revenue. But in the past 2 years, maybe since after the attack, you know, I don't think it has been regular.
It hasn't. It hasn't. I think there was a halt, and then it came back.
Just once
started generating. We've lost billions of naira.
For every day,
don't even trust the
for every day that the train does not move, money is lost. And if you are going to repay, you must repay this loan. Actually, you must repay this loan. Like at the moment, we are servicing loans about 98%. That means we are paying interest on loans, not even the main principal. About 98% of our revenues. So if you are doing a 10-year plan, talking about billions of dollars, The question is, how are you going to raise this money? It's not about making statements, but how are you going to implement it?
And we are all aware of how much the railway brought to the Nigerian economy in that short period of time that it worked.
Now, let's look at this. We are pressed for time, but it will be very unwise not to look at it. Now, this Gaza and the Hamas and Israeli war is actually taking a toll now. Western leaders are actually crying out, and they are saying that obey international law. And we've seen this morning, I think the latest development is that Israel are moving in with ground troops. They are training, and hostages have been released. Hamas, Gaza are releasing hostages, and we have a lot of devastating effect that has happened to these both nations. Now, looking at all of this, the international law and Western leaders calling, and it's not stopping. What does this even mean? Because a lot of people, or the ordinary man on the street, were like, is there nobody that can call these nations to account and say stop, and it will stop?
Okay, the issue in Gaza is a very peculiar issue. Very peculiar because I read Condoleezza Rice's autobiography as foreign minister, and she was saying, look, I think the headline of the chapter was saying, look, this problem has always been there, so I don't expect that it to be solved even in my own tenure as foreign minister. If you look at the story, of what is happening in Gaza, right from 1947 and whatsoever, it's been a problem. And I think for those of us who believe in God, maybe it's prayers that can help. Because if you look at the two sides, and if you watch the news, the number of persons who were abducted from Israel and taken to Gaza, about 200 and something. They will talk about 1,000 something persons killed. And then you now look at the current, what Israel is doing. And what are they saying? They say, look, we are trying to, protect ourselves. You understand? So I'm feeling that, you see, it's now time for the Hamas leadership and the Israeli government to come and to sit down and say, look, we are no longer going to be enemies. Let's cooperate, work together for the growth of our society.
But we've been having those calls for over 50 years.
Most of them are mediated. Most of them are mediated. You see, Americans will mediate, the Egyptians will mediate, Israel will mediate.
It just seems
they
like
sign agreement and they just keep.
It seems like we still need at least somebody, because obviously the American intervention, it's not working. All right, thank you so much.
The Americans, they are taking side.
Yeah, they are taking
side. But there is need for, that's why I say there is need for the Hamas leaders and the Israelis to sit down and say, look, let's live together.
Okay, just your final